You are asking, do you think government should include a new course which will explain to children, for example, that you can not offend others or that no one should infringe on them either? Of course, I think government, school districts, and either schools themselves should include some kind of, maybe not like course, but maybe like a seminar, or I don't know, like single lessons about what rights do children have in Kazakhstan. So I think in Kazakhstan schools, students, they are not aware of their rights, and they of course should know more about child abuse, child neglect, what their parents should do to take care of them, when they should call authorities or government. They should know what kind of like phone numbers they can have in order to have access to that kind of help. They also should know that like they can call some psychologists, specialists. I mean, they have to have all the resources to help themselves when there is like a domestic violence, domestic abuse is taking place in their lives. So definitely they have to have something like, maybe, I don't know about like whole course, but it's like school districts and governments, Ministry of Education's field of expertise. But our students and our children at school, students at school, when I say students, I mean школьники, да? They definitely have to have access to that resource and knowledge, knowing their rights, and knowing that when your parents like abuse you physically or mentally or psychologically, there is like a very subtle difference here between like abusing mentally or psychologically, or doing like telling your children do some domestic chores, right? So for example, you know Ali Asghar, when I say Ali Asghar, do your chores, like wash your dishes, he used to say that, okay mama, are you sure that you're not abusing your power on me? He was joking, of course. But I mean, of course, parents can tell this kind of stuff to their children. Children should listen to their parents. It's for their own good. But if there are parents that are, for example, they drink lots of alcohol, or they're on drugs, they don't behave adequately, right? Or they punish their children, like, I mean, confine them in like a dark room, or I don't know, or maybe beat them, or do some kind of physical harm. It's not normal, and children should know that. And it's one thing, it's called child abuse. There is a second thing called child neglect. So for example, there are some families, I think it's often people who drink alcohol or consume some drugs. They don't take care of their children, especially if they are very small. For example, they give birth to their children. Those children might be like very hungry or thirsty, I don't know, or they might be sick, and those drunk parents, they don't take care of them, and it's called child neglect. And child neglect, yeah. And it's also dangerous because child might need some medical attention, for example, or might be in hunger. I mean, he might be hungry, he or she, and it's also very dangerous. So if, for example, a student at school knows that his little brother or sister is not being taken care of, and parents are always absent or drunk, or I think in most cases in Kazakhstan we've had this like very scandals. No, it's not scandals, but very. I mean, lots of people know about the situations when they went to work. Both parents, they have to work to provide for their kids, right? I mean, they don't have money, so both parents should work. They live in some kind of like a single house unit. They topit pitch, that, то есть they burn, what it's called in, I don't know in English, so they topit pitch, and 5 sisters, like 5 kids in one house, they died because of that, like a few years ago in Astana. You can Google it. It's also child neglect. So parents neglected their duties. They were absent at night. They went to their works. 5 minors, 5 children under one roof stayed. Like the smallest one was very young, and they slept, and there was some kind of smoke coming out of the oven or chimney, or how do you call it, and they died. No one was awake to save them. So it's also child neglect. It's like one of the types of child neglect. And I think a few months ago, or maybe a month ago, in Karaganda Oblast, also, like, I don't know, there was like a fire or something. I'm not sure about details, but also some children died. So in Kazakhstan, it's a huge, like, acute problem, child abuse and child neglect. So children should know that they're not alone. If their parents beat them, or I don't know, do some kind of harm on them, they have to know what numbers to call. And teachers should also be responsible of observing their children. So let me explain you this. In America, in the United States, there is a system called responsible adult or something. I'm not sure. Don't cite this, but maybe after I answer by video, I'll send you this, like, exact term. Like, so teachers, doctors, nurses, and other social workers who work with children, they are mandated to report government or authorities if they see some kind of bruises on children's, or scratches, or some kind of trace of physical harm on child's body. For example, school nurse might see something like a bruise, like on the, I don't know, forehead, I mean somewhere, and this child school nurse, they don't call parents to ask what happened to your child, why your child has this bruise. They have to report authorities that, for example, John Smith has this bruise on his back, and it seems suspicious to me that he might got, like, beaten or something. And authorities, it's called child welfare services, right? Or in different states it might be called differently. They can't just, like, ignore this contact. It's recorded. They have to record everything. They have to put this on a report, and they have to go and observe that child in a home setting. They have to go and talk to a child without a parent in a room. There is like a protocol of how to behave in case. So because children might be afraid of talking. They might be afraid of talking, and they don't want harm their parents, right? I mean, they might say, okay, government will punish my parents, and I don't want that, and they will be silent. So in the United States, it's like a huge system, and these people around, like medical staff, doctors, school teachers, kindergarten teachers, daycare teachers, whoever around that child, they are mandatory reporters. I remember, it's called mandatory reporting. They are mandatory reporters. If they see that child might be, like, under some kind of physical harm, they have to report government. Otherwise, they will get punished for that. In Kazakhstan, I'm not sure if our teachers and the school doctors are mandatory reporters. I don't know. You have to research it yourself. So, answering your question, it was a very big, like, a long answer. I'm sorry. Of course, I will. I think it's like very reasonable to have some kind of course or seminar or single lesson at schools for children, appropriate for their age, so they would know their rights. The second question is very interesting and really smart, because society and communities in the United States and Kazakhstan are very different. Kazakhstan is more a patriarchal society, traditional society. and our parents used to listen, like hear this kind of things that from our parents, that shapalak is okay because their parents did shapalak to them, their parents did shapalak to them. So I admit that when my children were like very little or something, I could use also shapalak. I mean, I know that now, I know now that shapalak is wrong. You don't have, you must not beat your children. Of course I didn't beat them, but like in Kazakh society, it's called like maybe not right thing, but it's okay, right? Especially boys, like especially adult older men, they can just remember that how their fathers or grandfathers did them, like beat them with belts. Like, I mean, it's very painful probably, getting beaten by with a belt, like I mean, it's really I mean, it's really should be prohibited now like nowadays. So I think UNICEF report in 2017 you say that UNICEF report showed that almost 70% of Kazakhstan population uses violence to discipline children at home. I think this number is even bigger. I mean, people usually tend to show themselves like a very good parents, very good adults, and they don't report on themselves. They don't, no one, like, not everyone admits that they discipline their children using some kind of violence. So this number might be even bigger. And it's really dangerous because I don't think that 70% of Kazakhstan population like abuses their children. Of course not. In our traditional society also, from on other hand, loves their children, right? Right? I mean, it's not a problem. Our children are safe mostly, hopefully. But in this 67%, there might be like some kind of percentage when children are suffering, and it's government's job to protect them. Governments and other adults' job to protect them. So how can we change this acceptance of such behavior? I think only thing is to educate people. Our population, like civil society, is not, I mean, Kazakhstan population is not very educated in terms of like child abuse and neglect and domestic violence. For example, there was a new law a couple of years ago, закон о бытовом насилии, закон о семье и бытовом насилии, точно название не знаю, тоже прогуглите, был большой скандал, да? So our parliament wanted to I mean, this, what it's called in English, publish or accept this new law, I mean new regulation, new code about family and domestic violence or something. There was one arguable point about this reporting or about disciplining your child. I'm not sure because I didn't read that law, right? I mean, I'm not very familiar with that situation in Kazakhstan, but some bloggers played on a fear of people that if you give shapalak to your child, government will take your children from you, and people were like against this law. So government was going, like, government prepared this law and sent it to parliament, right? If parliament approved it, president would sign it, and this would be our law. So usually government and parliament, they all know that, okay, government is working on this law, parliament usually approves everything and sends to the president, and law becomes law. But in that case, after that, some bloggers and some people like with huge audiences scared Kazakhstan people that there is a new law is getting to be like accepted, and if they sign it, you will be under the risk of losing your children to the government because you discipline them at home. And people were like so against it. They feared it, and there was like a huge pushback, and Parliament didn't approve it because it was like a huge scandal. The thing is, it was a very needed document to stop domestic abuse and violence, especially toward women and children. So the latest case of Bishimbayev and Saltanat Nukenova, when this ex-government worker, Minister Qandıq Bishimbayev, like killed his wife, right? And this situation again raised lots of questions in Kazakhstan, right? That if that law was signed that time, if that, если тот закон приняли тогда, да, тогда бы там просто получается, давайте на русском объясню здесь быстренько. Насколько я понимаю, в том законе, в варианте закона, который должны были принять, раньше было административное наказание за то, что муж поднял руку на женщину. То есть муж мог бить женщину, женщина пошла жаловаться в полицию, мужа за это ничего нету, не было бы, там 15 суток или там штраф, все, никакого наказания, это административное правонарушение. Сейчас в этом законе еще было нововведение, что это превращается в уголовное правонарушение, а уголовное правонарушение уже гораздо жестче наказывается. И когда мужчины уже знают, или кто там, не только мужчины, но человек знает, что если он сейчас избил кого-то из членов своей семьи, то есть он 15 сутками не отделается, штраф не отделается, он там пойдет несколько лет будет сидеть в тюрьме, тогда сразу в эти вот domestic abuse and violence сразу пошел бы вниз. Вот это был бы очень важный пункт закона, и для детей это было бы хорошо. Но из-за того, что вот людей испугали вот эти блогеры, что если вы там поднимите руку на ребенка, от вас его заберут, это, кстати, ложный скандал был. Там в законе такого не было, что из-за шапалака заберут. Даже в Америке из-за шапалака не забирают. Сейчас я расскажу. Этот закон не приняли. So, I think the answer to your question is to educate people. For example, in the United States, since I researched this issue for that article in New York Times you are referring to, right? They only take that child from parents if they prove, like if it's proven that child is under great danger. No one is taking a child from home because of one, some incident, very light incident. No one. So United States is very protective against, very protective of children, right, who are being abused and neglected. Even they don't take them away. You have to prove that. The child should be like malnourished, like maybe dying or something, or in the hospital, like with this like a serious injury to be taken off the home. Usually they say, okay, if we talk to parents and parents understand that they have to take care of this child and government is watching them, we don't want separate parent and child, they say. It's the right thing because parents are the closest people to the children and they have to be together. It's a family. Some people might do once a mistake and they are not going to separate the family because of that mistake. So people in Kazakhstan should also understand that it's not going to be the case. So educating, like journalists writing about this, lots of like television programs, maybe bloggers doing some kind of reporting on that. I don't know. Students like you at universities doing some research and maybe telling about them to their families, or educating people that Chapalak is not going to, you are not losing your child because of Chapalak, but you have to be aware of these kind of things and to report if you notice that your neighbor's child is suffering, always having these bruises, or I don't know, or very, very thin, very, very sick and no one is taking it to the doctor. I mean, if you see something, you have to report. It's an education. So only answer is to educate. I don't know how to educate adult population. But it's an answer. Third question is also very good, and it's shocking for me that only 46 centers work for the entire Kazakhstan, and only 14 of them are in district centers. Of course, it's very, very small number. I mean, how many districts we have in Kazakhstan? How many oblasts do we have in Kazakhstan? I mean, it's very, very low number, and probably government should finance it, finance the centers and make sure that their numbers are bigger. What is the question? Do you think it's an effective way to help victims? Crisis centers. Okay. Again, I'm not an expert on Kazakhstan children's welfare, right? But I think we need more systemic approach to solve this problem. I think crisis centers are only the last point of this chain. Something bad happened, children are suffering, they get into these crisis centers. But what about others who do not end up there? Like, I'm sure there are lots of people. So you say almost 3,000 children contact these crisis centers numbers, right? Phone numbers. I'm sure there is like a huge lot of them who are not contacting because they are not there yet. So I think crisis centers are good, of course, and their numbers should be increased dramatically, because only it's 46 for 20 million population of Kazakhstan in 16 regions. It's very, very few, like in a proportion size, right? And but I think the most important of it all, there should be preventative systemic changes, as like educating of people, children knowing their rights, teachers knowing their rights, mandatory reporting of school, kindergartens, daycares, and hospitals and other medical sites and clinics, and etc. So I think the best answer for your third question is that crisis centers are not enough, even though their numbers should be increased. Also, systemic changes are needed. Please don't hesitate if you need like more detailed information on some of my answers, Anur Ghanem and friends. For now, I think I'm done for today.